for taking part in this. I really do appreciate y'all being here. Like I said, largely this is going to cover the different elements of season management. We're going to look at some profile stuff as well. So like I said, this is recorded. You can go back and watch it at a later date on YouTube. And hopefully you find this you find this helpful. Feel free to put any questions you have in the chat function. If you're in Google Meet, in the lower right, there's a chat window. Throw any questions in there. If it's a question that I feel like is appropriate for the group, I'll put it out to everybody. And then otherwise, we've got Chris here, like I mentioned. I know Dakota Tennyson, our other support rep, is in here as well. So they might just be answering those questions individually in the chat as we go along here as well. But we'll go ahead and get started. Share my screen. And we'll go through, like I said, primarily the profile tab and then season management. The first thing I want to highlight here is this is the dashboard page. This will be familiar for everybody. This is the page that you initially come to when you log in. There's obviously different options here for navigation, your season management, your race management, things of that nature. But the one thing that I really want to highlight on this screen is the sandbox located in the bottom of the screen here on the dashboard page. Sandbox is a great tool for testing, practicing different lineup schemes, seeing how, changes to an event or to a registration or something like that are going to work. So definitely utilize the sandbox if you want to go through a testing with different things. Obviously don't be afraid to reach out to us as well. If you send an email to support@myracepass.com, anyone in our support group will be able to get back to you as soon as we have someone available. But the sandbox is a great place where you can go to just try stuff and see how it works and see how it affects your profile. From here, I'm going to jump into the profile tab. The profile tab is largely information that folks are going to see in-app about your facility. So you can update your images here, and you can also edit the profile. And like I said, this is largely things that folks are going to see in the app about your facility: the track length, the track shape, the banking, your address information. You can put location information here as well, so folks can get Google Maps location directions to your facility. So make sure that that stuff is accurate. Unless you physically pick the racetrack up and move it somewhere else, none of that stuff will ever change. It's still a good idea to make sure you come in here, make sure it's accurate, make sure you're not, you've got, accurate stuff in here. The track features section is another thing in here that I'll highlight. And this is, I kind of call this a once a year place. You want to make sure that as you make changes or improvements to your facility, the amenities in the information in the app is still, reliable. So like for fans, if you offer camping, you allow coolers, if you take credit cards, for drivers, if you sell fuel, if you sell tires, those types of things. Invariably, you're still going to get 100 Facebook messages a week with all of these questions. But at least this way, folks, if they go to the app, they'll be able to answer some of their own questions if you have this information updated properly. So we want to make sure that that kind of stuff is updated. And then there's an aliases section here as well. So if your racetrack was ever known by a different name, you can add that old name as an alias. And that way, if someone searches for the old name in the app, it still brings them to the right place. So the profile stuff, like I said, it's really simple. It's really straightforward stuff, but it's valuable because when folks go to your facility in the app, they search, XYZ Raceway. This is the stuff they're going to see about it. So we want to make sure it's accurate. I'm going to show you guys the billing tab here as well. There isn't a lot that you can do here, but there's a lot of valuable information here. So you can see what your current subscription is. You can check out the card on file. You can view all of your previous invoices, those types of things. Every single one of these is a link. So if you need to keep track of this stuff on paper, you can go here. You can view your previous invoices, what they were for, things of that nature, and make sure that that's all accurate. But there's another thing here that I want to highlight. We've added a new feature. I don't want to say it's a new feature. It's existed for a little while. But since we did these spring webinars to now, in between that duration of time, this has been added. So I want to highlight this. Depending on what type of plan you're on, you can have either 2, 4, or 6 app subscriptions of all access accounts in the app for free, basically. So, you want to get your scores, that app view with live timing and scoring. You want to get that to your announcer, whoever you feel like needs to have those app subscriptions. This is a valuable tool. And I mean, that app is, you know, the cost comes out to around $55 a year that you're getting because you have a subscription. So you take, you know, you got the Plus plan, $55 a year, basically times 2. You can give out what would cost your users $100, and you can just give it to them. So, you know, if you got 4 on the Platinum plan, the partner, you're going to have 6. So, you know, make sure that you take that into account. You add those for the folks who need them. It's a tool that's available to you guys. I feel like there's a lot of folks that don't know about it. So make sure you come in here and you add those all access accounts to the folks that need them. The other thing that I'll show you in this profile tab is the users option. Now, there are a couple of different types of user roles that exist. There is a site member or a standard admin. The only difference between the two is it's an on-off toggle. If you're a standard admin, you can log in, you can make changes, you can view these things, all of that stuff. If you're a site member, you cannot. A site member has no ability to log in to your profile, to the admin side, to change anything. So you come in here, you've got an employee who had access before, but now they're leaving your facility for whatever reason. You can come in here and just change their role to site member instead of standard admin, and you'll be all set. Now, the process of adding an administrator is extremely simple as well. If I go here to add member, I can add them based off of the email address associated with their MyRacePass account. So I can go in and add myself here, change that person to a standard admin, and they have the ability to log in, and we're all set. When you add someone based off of an email address that does not currently have a MyRacePass profile or a MyRacePass account set up, it will send them an invitation to create one. So, you know, keep that in mind that actually if I go back to the main page here and I filter, there's going to be some demo garbage email that doesn't exist that we were kind of playing with before. That's what you'll see. If they don't have a MyRacePass account, they'll tell you that you'll give you the option to resend the invite to create one. But that's basically the profile tab and the things that are in it that are relevant, you know, from your profile information to your billing page to the administrators, things of that nature. If you have any questions about any of that, I can see a couple of you are in the chat already. Otherwise, you can send your emails to support@myracepass.com, and we can answer them that way as well. And that way, either Dakota, myself, or Chris can all get back to you as well. But that's everything I've got to show you in the profile tab. Again, rewards information you would have seen here in the past. We're not really covering that because there's been some internal discussions on that potentially changing. So keep that in mind, is that you might start to see new information about what's going to be in there. There are no user permissions. It's a yes, no toggle. You don't have to worry about that. Clear cache you guys won't see. But again, I mean, that's the information that's in there. You're not going to go there a lot, but it is valuable. So from there, I'm going to jump into season management here. And season management is basically the process of setting up your season, creating your events, creating your schedule, you know, making sure your points are accurate. Your payments tab is there as well. And then I'm going to have Chris talk a little bit about fantasy. Now, in our third session, Chris is going to give an entire presentation on fantasy. So today is just kind of a toe dip in the water. But in 2 weeks, you know, just to prepare everybody, if you want to bring earplugs or whatever else, Chris is going to give an entire presentation on fantasy. So we'll start here in this overview tab. The overview tab is largely just going to be different snapshots of things you can do in other places. So your upcoming events, you can obviously manage all your events in the events tab. Same thing with recent events. Registrations is you know, down in registrations as well. So there's nothing you do in the overview tab, just different windows and different things. But the one thing I want to steer your direction towards is up in the upper left-hand corner. A lot of the time, we've got folks who reach out to me this time of year, and they say, hey, I put in my 22 schedule, but I'm still just seeing it in 2021 on the website or in the profile or whatever else. It's because folks aren't creating a new season up here. So you want to make sure you come up here in the upper left, push the new season button, create your new season. Now, I want to make sure the naming convention makes sense. It can be a little bit confusing. A season and a schedule are two separate things. So your season is basically just Jan 1 to December 31. It's a calendar year. Now, if y'all were from Australia or New Zealand, I would say that, you know, there's going to be some weird splits. But here in the United States and Canada, where we're primarily most of you guys are, is it's just Jan 1 to December 31. Easy to do. You add your season. Now a schedule we'll get into. You can have multiple schedules per season. So a schedule is different than a season. A schedule is just basically a points calculation. But I've got my new season created, 2022. We're good to go. The first place I'll come to is config. Configuration is where you're setting up your series and your classes that might be running at your facility during a calendar year. You want to add this stuff here first because when you go to add your events, individual events, these are the options that you'll have to choose from. So you add your series and add your classes. Now for a lot of you guys, when you go to add a series here, it's going to look like there's an error message, but there's not. So when I go in to add a series, I can add all series. I'll go in here and I'll type. I know that this series probably isn't going to apply to most of you, but CompCam Super Dirt Series. So when I go to add that series, it's going to look like there's an error message here. There's not an error message. It's just the program telling you this series uses super late models. You haven't added super late models yet, so we're going to add that class at the same time. So because the program will automatically add the class associated with that series, it's more efficient to go in and add the series first, and then go ahead and add the rest of your classes after that. So again, I come in here. I know that I don't know if this is a thing anymore, but Dirt Nights Tour, you can go ahead and add that. Dirt Nights Tour, and it'll give you the error message, hey, this requires an IMCA modified. So that's all that's telling you is that it's just going to add the class associated. When you get to the point where you've added all of your series that are going to be running with you and the requisite classes that belong to that, then you can start adding the classes that are going to be associated with your venue during the calendar year. So as I go in and add classes, there's two different ways to add classes. And this is extremely important here, especially as we get into point standings and things of that nature, is that if you're running IMCA sanctioned classes or USRA sanctioned classes or WSOTA sanctioned classes, whatever sanctioning you're with, you want to make sure you add classes associated with that sanction as opposed to the generic out-of-the-box classes. So when I click more classes down here, there's an option for sanctioned classes. I'll choose IMCA, and now we're picking all of the classes that you're going to run this year that are associated with IMCA. Now, this is important for all the sanctioning bodies, but for IMCA specifically, because when we get to the point where, and I think we'll get to this point, maybe not in 22, but in the future, that IMCA is calculating their national points based off of what folks are doing in My Race Pass, it's going to be extremely important to use the IMCA sanctioned classes instead of the out-of-the-box A-mods and stock cars and hobby stocks and renaming them so that the classes are being sanctioned correctly on IMCA's behalf, and that your the national points and the state points and regional points are being calculated automatically. So if it's an IMCA sanctioned event, use the IMCA sanctioned classes. So your modified or your stock car, or your sport mod or whatever else. You can go every 305 sprints or whatever it is. Go ahead and add those. And then if you're running any events that are not sanctioned, if you're going to have a random non-sanctioned event, then you can add the generic out-of-the-box A modified instead of IMCA modified, or stock car instead of IMCA stock car, stuff like that, and use those generic classes for your non-sanctioned events. But again, sanctioned event, use the sanctioned class. If there's any number one most important takeaway that you're going to get from this session tonight, it's that using the correct classes is vitally important, especially as more sanctioning bodies are popping up, more traveling series using sanctioned classes are popping up. Like, if you're in my area, you'll know of the Midwest Madness Tour or the old Hawkeye Dirt Tour, stuff like that. Using the right classes makes those series, operate in the correct way, and it'll eventually make the national and regional points for IMCA in the correct way as well. What's up, Chris?
Well, and with that too, guys, if you know you have a series coming to town and you aren't sure what class they use exactly, either reach out to them via Facebook or us and say, hey, what class does the series use? And we'll look for you and make sure it's linked up correctly, because it really sucks when the class, say we have a late model series coming in, the actual series is a super, but you guys only have a late model added, then they don't link up there. So if you're not really sure, just email us, let us know, and we'll tell you what class it is to make sure it's on your schedule for you.
Tammy, you have a question?
This is actually Michelle. My mom is Tammy. So we're running IMCA Sport Mod sanctioned this year. What's the difference between Northern and Southern Sport Mods?
Where are you guys located?
We're actually formerly Quincy Raceways, but it's called Adams County Speedway now.
You have to be Northern, right? Northern Sport Mod.
Pretty sure that's Northern. You might want to get a hold of IMCA specifically. They kind of broke that out, and I'm not any, purveyor of modified rules in the world, I'll tell you that. So I don't know the technical differences. I know that the Southern Sport Mod thing happened for a while. I think it still is going on. I don't know if they run Super Nationals anymore, but more than likely where you're located, it'll be Northern. But get a hold of IMCA to know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not really sure where that Northern-Southern line, if it's Kansas, Oklahoma, draws there. But yeah, it's based, I think, literally just based on region.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So with the config tab being correct, we'll jump to the events tab. And this is where you're going to be able to start adding your events to the schedule. So I mentioned that you can have multiple schedules. I'll show you the differences here. Multiple schedules basically comes into play most commonly when you're calculating more than 1 point standing at one time. I use an asphalt track in Michigan as an example. They've got, a 20-race schedule, and then they've got 6 races for their late models that they call a Big Six series, where that's calculating its own point standing. So they're basically one event, one class is funneling points into 2 different point standings. So they use multiple schedules for that purpose. I'll also use 141 as an example, a little bit closer to home for a lot of the IMCA tracks. They've got their, Clash at the Creek and whatever. They've got like 12 events that are at the Creek. I don't know what they are, but they're all multiple day events. And they basically line up their Saturday night features based off of the points accumulated from their first 2 nights. So those first 2 nights are going to accumulate points, but it's not part of their track points. So they have a different schedule for those 3 events so that those first 2 nights can calculate points, and then they can do their lineups on the 3rd night based off of the points tally of the first 2. So anytime you've got more than 1 points calculation going on at one time, that's what multiple schedules is used for. Now, it's fairly rarely used for tracks anymore, but it is still available. And if you have any questions about how to implement that, sometimes it can be a little bit wonky or confusing, so definitely get a hold of us. Just want to make sure that was clear, that there is a purpose to multiple schedules and you can have multiple schedules. I'm going to add a schedule here for. Is there a question?
Yeah, Austin.
Yep.
On that, when you on the schedules, like we run IMCA mod lots, and they're part of their IMCA points. Their points are configured stately, and then we only do it at our track from start to finish.
Sure.
But then they also have a mod lot challenge series that's based on a few nights. Is that what you're discussing there as far as making 2 different schedules for them?
So in that situation, if the mod lights have their own challenge series, that's a traveling series, they'll have their own profile with their own points tally. The multiple schedules would be like if you are awarding multiple points tallies at once. So if your IMCA mod lights that you're going to run at your track are going to have a season-long track points, and then you're also going to have like 4 races that you're going to have your own special points tally for those 4 races, then you would have 2 schedules. But if it's a traveling series coming in, then that traveling series will have its own profile and it'll calculate its own points.
No, it's like you said at the beginning. It's a challenge inside of the other points that don't count towards track points.
Okay. Yeah, then potentially that could be its own schedule if it's something that only you guys are doing at your track. Absolutely. But I created a new schedule. Adding events to the schedule is a pretty straightforward process. As I go in and add events, we have reached the point in my race pass where, like, literally, I think we've got more events than days on the schedule. But I'll try this here. So if we're going to add, the first 3 Mondays of April, go ahead and add that. There is a process to adding events to your schedule. We've got you can do a couple of different things here when you're adding an event. You can add the classes that are going to be associated with that event. And those are, remember what you put in the config tab. So I'll just add one class here, my Sport Compact class, we'll call that good. But whatever you added in config are the options that you'll have to choose from here. You name your event, you put in the details information about your event. So when you're looking at your website, if you've got a website through us or your schedule in the app or on your profile, what you're going to see is you're going to see all of the events, the event names in chronological order on your schedule. And then when you click on a specific event, that's where you'll see the description information. So you want to put in, your running order, you want to put in event times, you want to put in, I don't know, purse information, if there's a county fair in town, whatever you feel like people are going to want to see about that individual event after they click on that one, put in this details box. But otherwise, you're basically naming the event. You're putting in details, you're selecting your classes, and you're putting in your times. So when your gates are going to open, when your pits open, gates open, hot laps, racing, all that kind of stuff. And I'll just throw in some random times here and call it good. And then our racing will start at 7, and that's good. Perfect. So now as I've completed creating the first event, add and next, and now I can get into creating the second event. You'll see that the class information and the time information is sticky. So that means that it'll remember what you're doing for each one of those. So I can go in and just name the second event. Oops. And the times and the classes are going to be the same, add and next. Same thing with the third one. So you can start seeing as you continue to add these events, if you're doing it all in one shot, pretty straightforward, pretty simple to do. You can name all of your events, and as long as your classes and times are the same, you're going to be able to get through these things pretty quickly. You can obviously come in here and edit the classes that are going to be a part of this. You can edit the times, all that stuff. But if it's the same every week, you've got a pretty straightforward process for adding your events. And we can go ahead and add. And now basically I've just added 3 events to this schedule. So these are, basically ready to be scored at that point. Now I can click on any of the event names, and I can go in and edit this information. So I can add tickets from here. Now there is a ticket management screen. So I would actually advise you to use that. And as we come to the third session for these, I'll use that ticket management screen as opposed to this button to show you how to add tickets. You can edit the name, edit the times, edit the description, add or remove classes, and then apply it to one or more schedules. So I've got this as part of my IMCA webinar schedule. I can actually add it to any of the other schedules that I have that exist. So one event can calculate points for multiple schedules at the same time, if that makes sense. And that's how you can add it there. The other thing about this schedules area is you'll actually start to be able to see the power of the MyRacePass network. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. You'll start to be able to see all of the different networks, all of the different profiles, tracks and series and drivers that event's a part of. So if I were to use an example, Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series is running this weekend. So if I'm the track and I'm running Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series and I go and look at the schedules tab, I'm the track, it'll show on my track schedule. It'll also show on Lucas's schedule. If there's any competing series running the same night like Comp Cams, it'll show on that schedule. It'll show on every driver's schedule that's a part of that series. So theoretically, you could come to schedules and you could see your one event appearing in 3 to 5 to even 10 different places, depending on how many tracks, series, and drivers are clients of ours that have it on their MyRacePass schedule. So you can start to see where your event's going to be advertised in a number of different places. What's up, Chris? You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that, guys. This goes into something for next year to keep in mind as well, too. I know we're in March right now, but we've always encouraged promoters to get your schedules on MyRacePass ASAP. The minute you guys know what's going on, get it out there. Because we have a lot of driver websites that drivers want to promote your events, let them know, hey, we're coming to your place, on this date. And that's a great tool for you guys to promote to your fans, too. So, I mean, we have some promoters that, do take that initiative that they are scheduled released and now it's on MyRacePass. Bam, done. So we always encourage, get your schedule out there as fast as possible because you guys can always change the names of the events later on. If you guys sell a sponsorship to an event, go back in at the name, no big deal. And then also on top of that, you can also, update some things inside the event too. But just to have your initial schedule out there as soon as possible. I'd always say by January, if you guys have it, put it out there, get it out, and make sure fans and drivers promote your events for you.
Yeah. The reason for that, to give you kind of some background information, is that this time of year we have a lot of drivers reaching out to us saying, hey, I'm trying to add my event at this track at this date. Drivers can't add an event to their schedule unless the track already has it. So if the track's a My Race Pass client, you have to have your events out there before a driver can add it. So that's the impetus behind that statement, is that we got drivers saying, I want to add an event at, whatever racetrack, Clyde Martin Memorial Raceway, and I can't because their schedule isn't out yet. Drivers getting frustrated. They want to put their events on their schedule. So that's where that comes from. So, yeah, you're helping everybody out if you're getting your schedule out early. I will say it's mid-March. If it's not out yet, you're probably a little late. I think even like mid-February is reasonable. But, after that, it starts to get noticed by drivers if schedules aren't out yet. So that's kind of where that comes from. Before I move on here, I want to make sure, does anybody have any questions about the prospects of adding a schedule, adding events to that schedule, those types of things before we move on into registrations? Cool. Then I'll jump here into registration, and we will go from there. Registrations is a way to gather driver information before the season starts. So this is not the same thing as entering a driver into an event. The actual entry process is part of the race management tab. We'll look at that next week. But this is how you can gather their information before the season starts. So things like contact information, address. If there's a car owner, all that same for the stuff for the car owner. Emergency contact. If they have their own transponder, their transponder number, the number options that they want to use. I don't know, jacket sizes in there. There may be more in there as we go forward, but those are the kinds of things that you're going to expect to be able to capture. I will say that managing your own contact list is, sometimes cumbersome. So if you can get the drivers to audit their own information for you through registration, it's valuable, especially come tax time. If you're relying on our 1099 report to tell you how much the drivers made throughout the course of the year, and you want us to be able to have that address on that report as well, that's going to come from registration. If you want to calculate a rookie point standing, independent of your other point standings, how does a driver tell you if they're a rookie or not? That's going to come from registration. So those are some of the things that you want to take advantage of and keep an eye out for through the registration process. Now, in terms of registration itself, there's a couple of different types of registration that we've got available. The first one being the most popular, an annual or a yearly registration type. Once a year, drivers are sending you their information, and you can capture it, and you can have the driver audit their own information that way. There's a couple of different options in registration. First off, you can charge. If you have a registration fee, you have a membership fee at your racetrack. We're all aware of Boone Super Nationals, IMCA Super Nationals. That's what they do. They have a registration fee. This is becoming much more commonplace throughout the country. You can charge through registration. The way we disperse those funds is through PayPal. So when someone registers with you, it's a flow through. You get that money immediately in your PayPal account, like within 10 minutes of that driver registering. We don't hold on to it. We don't take any fees out of it. We're not here to make money off of registration. Registration exists so that you can get driver information. And if you're charging for it for a registration or a membership fee, the money goes to you immediately. Along that vein, you can actually charge different amounts per class. So as I come in and I edit my yearly registration, you'll be able to see this. I've got 2 classes added. So I can have my base entry fee here. So if I'm charging $20 for registration, after a certain date, I could charge $5 extra for it to be $25. If I want my 410 sprint cars to be a $40 registration, then I put my $20 here for my base fee. I put another $20 here for an additional fee. Now they're $40 to register. So you can have different classes, pay different amounts if you need to. You can have late fees if you need to. Whatever you want to be able to see in there, we can facilitate. The downloads section is something that's fairly new also, and something that's proven to be extremely valuable for a lot of racetracks that have used it. I work for 2 different tracks. We use downloads for various things. I work for 2 different series on top of that. We have different uses for downloads. But downloads is basically a way to track basically a way to provide to drivers anything that they need to fill out on paper that's outside of My Race Pass. So we don't track social security number. We don't track tax ID number. We're web-based. The server, online server process makes it extremely difficult and expensive to do that. So we don't do that. Therefore, we have this downloads option. So any form that you want the driver to have in their hands that exists outside of what the information is that we're gathering in our registration process, put in here as a download. So you want them to have a W-9, put it in as a W-9. You want them to have a minor release form. You want them to have a, whatever paper form that you've got that, our registration isn't facilitating. When a driver registers, they get a confirmation email. Whatever you have here in downloads is attached to that confirmation email, so the driver has it in their hands. Now, I know these are race car drivers. They're not all going to fill it out. They're not all going to see it. I get that. But if some of them do, you're making opening night at the back gate go a lot faster for yourself just because you're utilizing this. It's been a really valuable tool for, pit stalls, minor releases, W-9, stuff like that. Folks can fill that out. Makes your life a little bit easier in that regard. When you've got your registration created, there's 2 buttons at the bottom of the screen here that I'll point your attention to. The first one's the online registration button. This is just a link to the registration, right? Just a link. That's all we're seeing here. The other one's a share button that shares that same link to Facebook and Twitter, to your social media accounts. So you see, you're probably seeing them a lot already at this time of year. Tracks and series are putting, hey, register with My Race Pass. All they're doing is clicking this share button right here, and it's going to Facebook and Twitter. Hey, register with My Race Pass. You can put whatever you want in there, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I don't have social media accounts added for a fake racetrack, but this is where you would go to do those things. Now, from a driver perspective, what does the driver see in registration? Well, this is what a driver sees in registration. Drivers can do this on their mobile device. It's not in the app. It's browser-based, but if you're putting the link on social media, it'll take them here. So they can do this on their mobile device or in their browser. So I'm putting in a Sport Compact. I'm a new competitor. Continue. Now, you can either start from scratch, or you can copy all of your previous registration information from a previous registration you filled out. So I'll copy that one. And now all your information's in here. For a driver, if you've registered more than once, it's extremely fast. All of your information's in here. All of your car number options are in here. If there's an owner, I can add owner information, like I said, transponder number, all that kind of stuff. But I'll continue. My registration's free, so I don't have to pay. And there we go. I'm good to go there. My registration is confirmed. So I'm going to get an email telling me that I've registered. Again, anything you put in downloads, they'll get as an attachment in that email. And when I go to my registration settings, now I'll be able to see, okay, I've got a Sport Compact that registered. All of that stuff is there, and it's included and all that. So it's showing up as confirmed because I filled out that registration before in that class. So that was pointless for me to choose Sport Compact. Let me try that a second time and choose 410 Wing Sprint Car so you can see what that process looks like. But for a driver, this is extremely straightforward.
And while Austin's doing that too, guys, don't forget this is mobile friendly now as well too. Your drivers can use their cell phones. It's mobile friendly. They go through it. It's formatted for it, so it makes it a lot easier. I know some drivers don't really have computers these days, and that's okay. They have an iPad or even their cell phone. They can click your link on Facebook, goes up to it, and they can go right through the whole thing there.
Cool. So there it is. Awesome. So now it tells me I've got a pending registration here. So you'll notice that as a driver, that literally took me 30 seconds to do. I mean, like, there's not a lot that a driver has to do, especially if they've registered more than once. It's straightforward. Now that driver's registered, I go to confirm. I can say, Okay, let's attach this registration to a driver profile. It says the name's Austin Lloyd. I'll attach it to that Austin Lloyd. It says he wants to be number 23. Okay, I'll put in a number 23. If you're going to allow him to register more than once in this class, you can allow duplicate entry. That's valuable if you've got more than one registration for the same class. Sometimes that comes into play. It's rare. Usually you get a hold of us first if that's going to come into play. We'll probably have worked through some things. Then there's an option for has all forms. So again, driver has other forms that they have to worry about turning into you outside of MRP. This is a way to track if they've turned them in or not. So if you've got a W-9, you've got a minor release form, you've got a pit stall registration, you've got whatever form they have to turn in, I can check the box for has all forms, and I can confirm. And that's valuable because, and I'll do this again here with Ross, I can come back and edit all of these things. So if I go in to edit the information after the fact, I can check has all forms here. So after week 1, you collect all the forms you have to collect. You can come in here and mark that they have them or not. In the entry list in race management, there's an area where you'll be able to see yes or no if they've checked that box or not. But you can edit all of this information. If you're using our MRP cards, this is also where you can assign them a card. We'll go through that a little bit more in depth next week, but the MRP cards are valuable. And you can also view the registration form. Now, there are some tracks that will print these off because you can put in your social security number or tax ID number right here and sign the form right here. So there's a lot of tracks that will print this off, that'll put in the social and the signature and just bring them to the back gate and have the driver fill that out and sign it at the end of the night, as opposed to doing a full W-9 or whatever else. That can sometimes be beneficial. So, keep in mind that that's an option as well. You can print all of the forms at the same time over here. You can print, different things. You can print all your rookies. You can print all your mailing labels. You can print it class by class. A lot of things that you can do here. But, just keep in mind those are some of the options that you have available in registration. Now, I think I mentioned there's an annual registration. There's an event-specific registration. So if you're collecting entries for one event, you can do that as well. It works the exact same way. It just ties the entries to one race as opposed to an annual registration. There's also a general registration we have keyed in here for something like a non-racing event. So if you want to track who's coming to your banquet, track who's coming to like a pit party, whatever, you can do that as well. And then there's a miscellaneous one. The general registration's at the bottom. There's a miscellaneous one as well. Miscellaneous, I think you have to be on a certain plan to get to. Yeah, there's different options for that. Some folks use it as a second yearly registration. Some folks use it for, regional series as opposed to, just one main overhead series, think ASCS or something like that. A couple of different ways to use miscellaneous, but it doesn't come into play very often. And again, most of the racetracks and series that I work with are going to use the annual registration, have everyone register once a year. That way you have all their data. It's fast, easy, and clean. And all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's easy to get paid. We send it to PayPal immediately when someone registers. So that's the registration page. There's a lot that goes into registration. There's a lot that you can track and do and work with and change in registration. So if you've got any questions about that, if you've got any questions about applying that to your own specific and unique scenario, your own specific and unique track, do not be afraid to reach out to us, support@myracepass.com. If you're charging for folks to register, you can make everything secure. You can make everything time effective, efficient, money and time wise by doing it through MRP. And we want to help you get there with your stuff if that's possible. Points is the next tab here. And I'm going to jump to a different schedule so you can see what a points page looks like when there's data. Points will show you what you would expect the points page to show you. You've got your competitors here on the left. If you're calculating owner points, there's a tab for owners as well, if you're going to calculate your owner points. You've got your events, your features, your wins, top fives, top tens, points and differential. All that stuff you would expect to be on a points page is here on the points page. There's also an earnings column off to the right. Do not fret about that. That earnings column is not publicly available anywhere. Nobody will be able to log into the app or their profile or whatever and be able to see that earnings information. Only exists here for administrators. Some other things on this page, if I click on the name of a driver on this page, you'll actually be able to see information for each race night for that driver. So I can click on a random night. I can see, hey, you know, I finished 8th that night, so I got 33 points and $25 for my efforts that day. So you can easily audit this on a night-by-night basis for an individual driver if you need to. Driver says, hey, what the heck's going on, man? This doesn't look right. How many points did I get for that night? And what place, all that stuff. You can just come here. You can audit the information in one view. Easy and fast to be able to see. Similarly, actually, let me show you one other thing here. So if I'm Austin Lloyd and you entered Austin Lloyd into the event, but you're like, shoot, I meant to enter Austin Lloyd Jr. or whatever, or a different driver, you can replace them with someone else if needed. I would caution you extremely about using that, because now you're taking all of the entry data, the lineups data, the results data, the points data, and the pay data, and you're moving it all to someone else. So, like, be extremely careful and be extremely sure of what you're doing if you're going to use that, but it is possible. And then there's also an edit button over here that'll actually take you directly to the points and pay tab and race management for that night. So you can, you know, make any editations that you need to if that's the route that you're going to take. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. Go back to the points page here. There is also an option for adding an adjustment up here. This is, again, be extremely careful and thorough and sure of what you're doing if you're going to use this. I see that there's a question in chat for re-entering all the points and pay schemes each year. You'll only ever have to do that if the points and pay schemes are changing. Otherwise, they're always going to exist. They never get removed on a year-by-year basis. There's also, what's the best way to do a sub-driver? This is probably the best way to do a sub-driver. You enter the person who's actually driving the car that night into the lineup or into the entry list, and then you can go here to this screen after the fact, and you can add an adjustment for, okay, so, you know, sub driver, put it in the competitor field and remove the amount of points that he earned that night from his list. So that way the driver that raced can show in entries, lineups, and results. Everybody knows who raced, whatever else. And then you come in here and take the driver who wasn't there but is actually earning points. You put in that driver's information. You add in the number of points that he's going to get or the pay or whatever, and then you can add that here. Now, there's another option also that says for tiebreaker. If you do that, the change that you make will not affect the points tally as it's publicly viewed. But if you've got two drivers that are tied on points, the system's going to arbitrarily list one above the other. If you want it to show the other way, then you go in here and you can add a 1 + 1 point, make it for tiebreaker. The points will still show tied, but it will change the order so you'll have accurate standings at the end of the year. So that's valuable as well. Included events are down here as well, so you can easily see what events are included in the point standings and which ones are not. So I can click on a link to an event and easily see and audit the information that's there. And then if there's any events that you have calculated for different points tally or don't have points calculated for, there's going to be a not included event section as well. I don't have that in my demo profile, but it exists. Then the last option on this page is championship settings. This is our advanced championship calculation, rarely used, but it is available. It's for things like if you're going to have an age-specific points tally, you can have, you know, a seniors only division or whatever. You can have an age-specific points tally within a class as well. If you're going to have multiple classes combined into one points championship, like you run IMCA sanctioned hobby stocks, and then you have a night where with a traveling series, you have to have unsanctioned for whatever reason, you can combine those two classes into one points tally if needed. Again, rarely used. Usually we set it up if a track needs to use it because we've come over some obstacles or hurdles already, but you can do it that way. It's also good for throwaway nights. So if you're running 20 events throughout the course of the season, you're throwing out their worst 2. This is how you tell the program, hey, only keep the top 18 or throw out the worst 2 or whatever else. Again, rarely used, but available. And if you need to get that set up, we absolutely and are willing to help with those types of things. But that advanced championship calculation only available on a certain plan. I think it's partner and kind of complicated. So it's usually a good idea to get with us if you're going to set something like that up. Payments is the next tab here. Payments is a way for you to be able to see all of the purse payout information for each class for each race night that you've calculated. So you'll be able to come in here, click on a class. You can print your checks from here. If you need to print checks, you can print a report for folks to sign for their checks. Has the driver's name, or excuse me, the payee's name. If the payee is an owner, the driver's name is in parentheses, how much they were paid, white space form to sign, all that kind of stuff. It also allows you to print mailing labels. If you're sending out your checks through the mail after race night, you can do it that way. There's a QuickBooks export here as well if you're using QuickBooks to track your financials. This is a page that I'm going to cover at the end of our race management walkthrough next week as well, because all of this will transfer over from race management with one click. So you can easily push the payout data to this page, easily push the payout data to our 1099 report. Just so it'll make a little bit more sense at the end of a race night. But again, you can see what checks you printed. You can see, all the information there, all that kind of stuff. So it's a valuable tool and a valuable page. And again, we'll look at it again next week. Fantasy is the next option here. And this is going to be a quick look at fantasy. Chris has an entire presentation on fantasy planned for the third option of these. But fantasy exists and happens with no input from you. Based off your entry list, drivers will be put into groups. Fans can make those picks. It'll accumulate points. You'll have a fantasy winner at the end of the night, and you don't have to do anything to make that happen. Now, we encourage you to do things because it'll increase your engagement, increase the amount of folks who are playing fantasy or engaging with your track on that race night. And you can do things like change the name of a fantasy group. So you can have it be a marketing partner. You want to go out and sell app impressions to a marketing partner instead of just your Hobby Stock Fantasy Challenge. It can be your Bob's Garage Hobby Stock Fantasy Challenge, and that can be on a nightly basis or a year-long basis. You can also add prizes. Adding prizes is the thing that gets folks excited. Whether that's a $15 VP Racing fuel jug with all the A-Main starters signing it, whether that's a sweet WWE Championship belt, whether that's a spot at the table at your banquet to be recognized, whatever that is, you can give away prizes. Get creative with it. We want to see that take off, obviously, because people subscribe to the app to play. So, of course, we want to see it take off. But we want to see it take off because for drivers, they get super proud of it. Drivers will start tweeting out, hey, pick me in fantasy. They have no affiliation with us. They have no affiliation with you other than racing there, but now they're advertising your event on social media just because they think it's cool that their mom can pick them in fantasy or whatever. So yeah, it's really valuable. It's a really big tool for fan engagement. I've got a few minutes here left. Suspension management is nothing. Tracks and series can't manage suspensions, only sanctionings can. So I'm going to take the last few minutes here to let Chris kind of expound upon MRP Fantasy and what kind of tools you have available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Austin. So with that, guys, I mean, just think about every year during football season, ESPN promotes their fantasy football for NFL and, all those different leagues for MLB fantasy. Millions of fans play that. We have given you that same kind of tool now to really engage the fan base at your racetrack. That's the number one thing. We want to engage fans, not just sit there and, yeah, cool, we're watching the racing action, but give them something to do and a reason to cheer on. A lot of times you have your modified fans who go to the bathroom during hobby stock action because it's not their thing. Well, with fantasy racing now, they can pick their drivers and they have a reason to watch that portion of the show now and really be engaged with there. We had some drivers at I-80 Speedway where I'm the announcer on Friday nights here in Ashland, Greenwood, Nebraska. We had one driver let me know, hey, over the PA, tell fans, the first 5 fans that come out of my pits and show me on the app that they picked me on their fantasy team, they get a free t-shirt. I mean, things like that, it's an incredible, valuable tool. To kind of put numbers in your guys' minds here, we have around just over 250,000 race fans every weekend on the My Race Pass app. looking at lineups, results, entries, and making their fantasy picks. And now you can have that same exact action now at your racetrack. And it's such an incredibly valuable tool, and it takes very little effort from the promoter side of things. I mean, as far as actually execution on race night, as Austin mentioned, there's nothing you have to do. I mean, the minute you go ahead and save the driver entry list and create lineups, bam, picks are open. And fans can actually get push notifications on their phone that let them know, hey, picks are open for XYZ Raceway. Make your picks now. Click it and good to go. So that's an incredibly valuable tool for you guys. And have fun with it. That's the other thing, too. The whole part of owning a racetrack or promoting a racetrack, the whole goal is how much fun can we have? You know, that's what we want to do. We want to have fun. And this is part of that, having fun and coming back to the racetrack. And I don't think Austin mentioned this here, but also don't forget that when your fans allow the app to track their location where they're at, they do get bonus points for being at your racetrack. I think it's 2 bonus points at the beginning of the night just for playing, and then every pick they make, they get every pick that's right at the end of the night, they get 1 extra bonus point per correct pick of the night. So there have been times where I think at the Chili Bowl, we had about close to 1,100 fans playing all week long at the Chili Bowl across the entire country, but it came down to who had the bonus points and who was there all week. So that guy did. So we're giving the fans a reason to be at your track while playing fantasy racing. It's fun to play along. It's great to play along. Go ahead and give away some prizes and have a good time with it. I mean, it's really a fun aspect that is already available to you, the promoters, to use at your discretion there. Fans, it's like $6 a month is all it is. And they get live timing on the app. They get all the results in the app. They get insider stats and driver information on the app, all that. So, that fantasy racing tool, guys, it's going to be a game changer if you guys were to use it the whole time there.
Absolutely. Just as an aside, a fun story about fantasy. My wife got fantasy just so that my 7-year-old son could also make his fantasy picks. And what it's done this year is when the World of Outlaws are on TV, it used to be, I go downstairs to watch the World of the Outlaws so that my wife can be upstairs and not watch that or watch literally anything else. And now she sits with me and watches the Outlaw races because she has some kind of engagement. It used to be, tell me where Carson Macedo finished. That's all I care about. Now it's every heat race. I've got 2 or 3 drivers that I can pay attention to and cheer for.
Yep.
And if that's happening to me on my couch with my wife, who's not just cheering for the most attractive driver anymore, she's cheering for other drivers. It can work for you too. If people my age are going to be on their phones, they might as well be playing fantasy and engaging with your event as opposed to on Facebook looking at anything else in the world that they could be doing. So winning is valuable.
Two more things. Excuse me. 2 more things with that as well too. On the fantasy racing aspect, once your fans make their picks and they save them for any or all classes, when they go to the lineups, all the driver little squares or little entries will have a FR in the top left corner, letting them know that's their pick where they're starting at. And when you guys use live timing, and you actually send the lineups over to My Lab through Westhold, on the live timing tab, all the drivers that they picked will have their little FR thing. So you can literally see where your fantasy picks are at in real time on the MyRacePass app. So it's an incredible tool on that aspect. And also too, once your fans make their picks, they can go ahead and from the app, click a button and text all their buddies, hey, make your picks for XYZ Raceway right there. I do it every Friday night at East Speedway. I make my picks. I text like 15 people, get the picks in, I get them in, and they're all good to go from there. So we're giving you guys a lot of great promotional tools right here that are going to be a massive hit for your racetrack.
Sure. I know they got pretty salesy there, so I apologize for that. It's something that we believe in, though. I want to take the last few minutes here to open basically the floor for questions about what we've covered. Now, next week, it'll be race management, MRP Live, connecting, what lineups to choose, importing results, points and pay schemes, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of season management stuff, setting up a season, adding events, adding registration, points, fantasy, any of that stuff, is there anything that anyone has any questions about that they want to shout out here before we wrap up? Cool. Well, I know that that's a lot of information quickly. And I know that a lot of times it takes, looking at stuff before questions come up. If you do have questions, again, support@myracepass.com is I will have you I'll have you send them. So support@myracepass.com. It's in the chat there. If you got any questions, send them on. Otherwise, the next IMCA specific presentation, again, March 22, I believe that's next week, Tuesday, same time, 7:30. You all are welcome. You all are welcome to bring your friends. We'll cover race management, other things of that nature. So I look forward to that. And until then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening. I appreciate you taking the time from your evening to jump in and watch one of these and learn what you've got to learn.